smartphones have become more than just gadgets, they're extensions of who we are. They wake us up in the morning, guide us through our day, connect us to the world, and even capture the moments that matter most. But when it comes to choosing a smartphone, one debate seems never-ending: iPhone versus Samsung Galaxy. Which one is truly the best? For over a decade, these two giants have been at the forefront of innovation, shaping not only how we use our phones but also how we think about technology itself. Apple, with its iPhone, has built a reputation around sleek design, a tightly integrated ecosystem, and an experience that just works. On the other side, Samsung's Galaxy series has been pushing the limits of hardware, offering cutting-edge displays, powerful cameras, and bold experimentation with new features. This isn't just a battle of specs, it's a clash of philosophies. Apple believes in control and perfection of the entire experience, while Samsung embraces variety, innovation, and pushing boundaries. And today, we're going to spend the next 2 hours diving deep into every single aspect of this rivalry, from history to design, performance to cameras, and yes, finally, we'll give our verdict at the end. The iPhone story began in 2007, when Steve Jobs walked onto the stage in his black turtleneck and jeans, and unveiled a device that combined an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. People were stunned. Until then, smartphones had physical keyboards, styluses, and clunky operating systems. The iPhone changed everything with its multi-touch screen and simple design. Meanwhile, Samsung was already in the phone game, but its real move into the smartphone spotlight came with the launch of the Galaxy S in 2010. Unlike Apple, Samsung wasn't trying to reinvent the phone from scratch, it was trying to improve and compete with what Apple had started. Over the years, we've seen both companies evolve dramatically. Apple moved from the iPhone 3G to the 4 with its famous Retina display, then to the 5, the 6, and eventually to the iPhone X in 2017, which killed the home button and embraced the notch. Each generation has felt like a deliberate step, with Apple emphasizing refinement over radical change. Samsung, however, often took the opposite approach. The Galaxy S3 was one of the first Android phones that truly rivaled the iPhone in popularity. Then came the Galaxy Note series, with its massive screen and stylus, something Apple mocked at first, until years later, when they introduced the iPhone Plus models and eventually the Apple Pencil for iPad. Samsung also experimented with curved displays, modular accessories, and more recently, foldable devices like the Galaxy Z Fold and Z Flip. So, from the very beginning, the DNA of these two brands has been different. Apple as the perfectionist, Samsung as the bold experimenter. And that DNA shows up in every aspect of their products. Let's see how in the design and build. When you pick up an iPhone, it feels instantly recognizable. Apple has always focused on premium materials, aluminum, stainless steel, ceramic shield glass. There's a symmetry to their designs, a minimalism that screams luxury. From the rounded edges of the iPhone 6 to the flat sides of the iPhone 12 and beyond, Apple's design language is about timelessness. You can usually spot an iPhone from across the room. Samsung, on the other hand, has been more daring. The Galaxy S6 introduced a beautiful glass and metal design, and Samsung's curved, infinity display on the S8 set a new trend in the industry. Their phones often look futuristic, sometimes even ahead of their time. Pick up a Galaxy Ultra device, and you'll notice its massive camera bump, curved screen, and bold presence. It feels powerful, almost like a tech statement. But design isn't just about looks. It's also about durability. Apple has leaned into ceramic shield, claiming it's the toughest smartphone glass in the world, while Samsung partners with Gorilla Glass Victus and has consistently improved water and dust resistance. In terms of build, both are at the top, though Samsung sometimes pushes size and thinness to extremes, while Apple stays conservative. The choice often comes down to personality. Do you want a phone that feels timeless and elegant, or one that feels bold and futuristic? Nowhere does this design philosophy shine more clearly than in their displays. Apple was once ahead with the Retina display branding, but today, Samsung is widely considered the king of smartphone displays. And that's no coincidence. Samsung actually manufactures the OLED panels used in iPhones. On Galaxy devices, you often get larger, brighter, higher resolution screens with features like Quad HD Plus resolution, 120Hz adaptive refresh rates, and HDR10 Plus support. Watching movies, scrolling through social media, or gaming on a Samsung feels buttery smooth and incredibly vibrant. Apple, on the other hand, doesn't always chase the numbers. iPhones typically have lower resolution on paper compared to Samsung's flagships, but Apple optimizes color accuracy, brightness, and smoothness to deliver a display that just feels true to life. The Super Retina XDR displays are bright, sharp, and calibrated for things like video editing and photography. The difference is subtle. Samsung's displays dazzle you with their punch, Apple's impress you with their realism. If you put them side by side, Samsung often wins in wow factor, but Apple wins in balance. And when it comes to features like always-on display, Samsung had it for years before Apple finally introduced it in the iPhone 14 Pro. Again, we see the pattern. Samsung innovates first, Apple refines later. But a beautiful display is only as good as the power behind it. So, let's talk performance. If you ask tech reviewers about the fastest chip in a smartphone, 9 times out of 10, they'll say Apple. Apple's A-series chips, from the A11 Bionic to the latest A17 Pro, have consistently outperformed Qualcomm's Snapdragon processors in raw benchmarks. Even 2-year-old iPhones sometimes outperform brand-new Android flagships in certain tasks. Samsung, however, isn't far behind. Their Galaxy S Ultra models with Snapdragon 8 Gen processors are absolute beasts, capable of handling heavy gaming, multitasking, and advanced features like Samsung DeX, which turns your phone into a desktop computer when plugged into a monitor. Apple's strength lies in efficiency. Their chips are tightly integrated with iOS, meaning they can deliver smooth performance without needing massive amounts of RAM. Samsung phones, on the other hand, often come with double or triple the RAM of iPhones, to ensure similar multitasking smoothness. So, if you want raw, consistent, long-term performance, the iPhone usually leads. If you want flexibility, power, and features like expandable multitasking, Samsung delivers. And one area where performance is felt most directly is in the cameras. Cameras have become the ultimate battlefield between iPhone and Samsung. After all, most people use their phones as their main camera today. Apple's philosophy is simple, it just works. You point, shoot, and get a great photo almost every time. Their image processing focuses on realism, true-to-life skin tones, balanced colors, and reliable results. Videography is another area where iPhones dominate. From cinematic mode to ProRes recording, iPhones are the go-to for content creators who want consistency and professional-grade video. Samsung, however, often chases specs. They were among the first to introduce ultra-wide lenses, 100x, space zoom, and sensors with over 100 megapixels. The Galaxy Ultra series is practically a DSLR in your pocket, offering incredible detail, massive zoom capabilities, and night photography that can light up a scene like magic. The trade-off? Sometimes Samsung's photos can look overly processed, sharper, brighter, but less natural. For casual users, this can be a plus, because the photos pop instantly on social media. For professionals, Apple's natural approach may be more appealing. And then there's innovation. Samsung's foldables, for example, give you creative camera angles iPhones can't. But Apple holds the crown in stability and reliability, especially for video. So, whether you want a do-it-all camera with endless features or a camera that guarantees consistency, the choice is clear, but different for everyone. When we talk about smartphones, hardware gets a lot of attention, but software is where the real experience lives. And here, Apple and Samsung couldn't be more different. Apple's iOS is like a luxury hotel, polished, controlled, and consistent. Every app feels like it belongs. Updates come at the same time for every supported device, and the system rarely slows down. You'll find simple gestures, uniform design, and features that are carefully thought out before they're released. But here's the trade-off. Apple decides what's possible. Customization is limited, and you're expected to play within their rules. Samsung, running on Android with its One UI skin, is more like a bustling city. You can customize almost everything: wallpapers, themes, widgets, even the layout of your app drawer. Want split-screen multitasking? Samsung gives it to you. Want to run desktop mode with DeX? That's possible, but with that flexibility comes complexity. Some users find Samsung phones cluttered, with features they'll never use. And then, there's the ecosystem. Apple's biggest strength lies in how seamlessly its devices work together. Your iPhone unlocks your Mac, your AirPods switch automatically, your iPad continues where your phone left off, and AirDrop makes sharing effortless. For someone invested in Apple products, It feels like living in a perfectly connected bubble. Samsung also has an ecosystem, though it's not as tightly controlled. Galaxy Buds, Galaxy Watches, and Galaxy Tabs connect beautifully with Galaxy phones. Samsung also partners with Windows, so your Galaxy can sync with your PC for calls, texts, and file transfers. The flexibility here is broader. You're not locked into one brand as tightly as Apple. So again, it's a philosophical divide. Apple offers the simplicity of a walled garden, while Samsung offers the freedom of an open city. Which experience you prefer depends entirely on your personality. Apple has always been conservative with battery sizes. If you look at raw numbers, iPhones often have smaller batteries than Samsung's flagships. But here's the catch. Apple's efficiency is so good that an iPhone with a smaller battery can last just as long as, or even longer than, some larger Samsung devices. The tight integration between hardware and software gives Apple an edge in endurance. Samsung, however, often packs in massive batteries, 4,500 mAh, 5,000 mAh, sometimes even more. This makes sense, because their phones power high-resolution screens and a wide array of features. For heavy users, Samsung phones are often more reassuring because you know you've got that extra capacity. Charging is another story. Samsung offers super fast charging, sometimes up to 45 watts or more, depending on the model. That means you can go from empty to nearly full in under an hour. Apple, by contrast, is far slower. Even today, iPhones charge at a maximum of around 20 to 27 watts, which feels outdated when compared to Samsung, or Chinese brands like Xiaomi, which push 100W plus charging speeds. Wireless charging and reverse wireless charging are also areas where Samsung has been ahead. Imagine your friend's earbuds are dying. You can place them on the back of your Galaxy phone, and it charges them. Apple only recently added MagSafe accessories, which are convenient but still slower in charging speed. So if charging speed and flexibility matter, Samsung wins. But if you want steady, optimized battery life without worrying about numbers, Apple delivers. In today's world, security and privacy aren't optional, they're essential. And this is where Apple makes some of its boldest claims. Apple markets itself as the privacy-first company. Features like app tracking transparency prevent apps from following you across the web without permission. Data is encrypted. Face ID is one of the most secure biometric systems, and Apple doesn't sell your data to advertisers. Of course, critics argue that Apple's walled garden gives them control over everything, which is a different kind of power, but for most users, Apple feels safer. Samsung, being on Android, has more moving parts. Google services are deeply integrated, and advertising-driven data collection is part of the model. But Samsung adds its own layer of protection called Knox Security, which has been praised for enterprise-level defense. Knox encrypts your files, protects sensitive apps, and even offers a secure folder for personal data. Samsung also gives users options like ultrasonic fingerprint scanners, which work in more conditions than Apple's Face ID. So the question becomes, do you value Apple's strict privacy stance, or Samsung's balance of strong security with more flexibility? Both are secure, but Apple leans into trust, while Samsung leans into options. Apple iPhones are expensive, there's no way around it. The base models start high, and if you go for a Pro Max with maximum storage, you're easily paying over $1,500. Apple rarely discounts, and iPhones maintain resale value for years. That's a hidden benefit. If you sell your iPhone after 2 years, you often get much more back compared to an equivalent Samsung. Samsung's pricing strategy is more diverse. Yes, their flagship Ultra models are just as expensive, sometimes even pricier. But Samsung also offers frequent discounts, trade-in deals, and bundles. You can pick up a Galaxy S device for hundreds less just months after launch, something that never happens with iPhones. Samsung also has a wider range, from budget A-series phones to foldables, giving customers options at every price point. So while Apple feels premium and stable, Samsung feels flexible and accessible. Value, in this case, depends on whether you see your phone as an investment, Apple, or as a constantly evolving tool, Samsung. Apple is playing the long game. They're investing heavily in augmented reality with the Vision Pro, which could one day tie directly into the iPhone. They're rumored to be working on foldables, but as usual, they'll only release it when it feels perfected. Apple's focus will likely stay on making the iPhone the centerpiece of a connected lifestyle, your car keys, your credit card, your health monitor, and maybe even your AR controller. Samsung, meanwhile, is already shaping the future with foldables. The Galaxy Z Fold and Flip may still feel like niche products today, but they've proven that flexible screens can be real, useful, and even stylish. Samsung's willingness to experiment means they'll likely keep pushing into new form factors, higher megapixel counts, and new AI-driven features. They're not afraid to take risks, even if some fail. AI will also define the next generation. Apple will likely focus on private, on-device AI that feels seamless, while Samsung will embrace powerful cloud-based AI features through its partnership with Google. The future might not be about raw specs, but about intelligence, the phone that knows what you need before you even ask. But beyond AI, there's another battlefield emerging: how these companies envision the role of the smartphone itself. Will the phone remain our central device, or will it slowly dissolve into the background, replaced by wearables, glasses, or even invisible assistants? Apple seems to be preparing us for a world where the iPhone is no longer the star, but the hub. Think about it. The Apple Watch tracks your health, the AirPods connect you seamlessly, the Vision Pro extends your reality, but the iPhone ties it all together. It's not just a phone anymore, it's your digital passport, your doctor, your photographer, your remote control for life. Samsung, however, is betting on the form factor revolution. Their foldables aren't just experiments. They're hints at a future where your phone might replace your tablet, your laptop, even your TV. Imagine unfolding your Galaxy to watch a full movie on a screen larger than any iPhone can offer, or flipping it shut to slip into your pocket. Samsung wants to redefine what a phone looks like, and by doing so, redefine what we expect it to do. And let's not forget regional influence. Apple dominates in North America, Europe, and parts of Asia like Japan, where premium design and ecosystem lock-in thrive. But Samsung is often stronger in markets like South Korea, India, and parts of the Middle East, where variety and competitive pricing matter. This global tug-of-war shows that best isn't universal, it's contextual, shaped by culture, economy, and lifestyle. Now, another layer that often gets overlooked is customer psychology. Why do people line up for iPhones every year? Why do Galaxy users proudly show off their ultra-zoom shots? The answer lies in identity. Owning an iPhone is almost like wearing a luxury watch. It signals status, reliability, and belonging to an elite club. Owning a Samsung Galaxy, especially the Ultra or a foldable, signals curiosity, tech enthusiasm, and a love for being ahead of the curve. And then there's brand trust. Apple has built a narrative around privacy, exclusivity, and premium design, while Samsung leans into innovation, variety, and giving people choice. Both brands know their audiences intimately and speak to them in completely different voices. This is why switching camps feels so rare. People don't just buy a phone, they buy a philosophy. But let's stretch this forward into the next 10 years. What could an iPhone 25 or Galaxy S35 look like? For Apple, you might imagine a nearly invisible device. No ports, no buttons, just a slab of glass powered by invisible computing, connected seamlessly to AR glasses. For Samsung, maybe a phone that rolls out like a scroll, turning into a giant tablet, or one that folds multiple times into new shapes. Their directions may diverge even more dramatically than they do today. And in the middle of all this, sustainability will matter. Both companies are under pressure to reduce e-waste, use recycled materials, and move toward greener production. Apple is already experimenting with 100% recycled aluminum and carbon-neutral operations, while Samsung is exploring eco-friendly packaging and modular components. In the future, the best phone may not be judged only by speed or design, but by how responsibly it's made. But here's a fascinating question. What happens when smartphones peak? When they've reached a point where improvements are marginal, slightly better cameras, slightly faster chips, slightly brighter screens. That's when the battle shifts from hardware to experience. Services, software intelligence, and ecosystem loyalty will decide the winner. Apple may lock you in with iCloud, Fitness Plus, and exclusive integrations. Samsung may win you over with open AI partnerships, hardware variety, and integration with smart homes and PCs. And as consumers, we're caught in this dance. Every launch event feels like a performance. Apple's highly choreographed reveals versus Samsung's flashy, futuristic showcases. We're not just buying devices, we're buying into narratives. One tells us that perfection takes time. The other tells us that the future is already here. Apple doesn't just sell phones, it sells a lifestyle. Think of those clean white ads, the iconic silhouettes dancing with iPods years ago, and now the simple yet powerful, shot on iPhone, campaigns. Apple knows how to create desire by saying less. Their presentations aren't about overwhelming you with numbers. They're about telling a story, about a grandmother FaceTiming her grandkids, or a filmmaker shooting a movie with nothing but an iPhone. It's emotional, human, and designed to make you feel like owning an iPhone makes your life meaningful. Samsung, in contrast, thrives on spectacle. Their ads highlight features that scream innovation: massive zoom shots of the moon, folding displays flipping open like something from a sci-fi movie, and bright colors flashing across the screen. Samsung's marketing is bold, loud, and unapologetically technical. They want you to know they're pushing boundaries, that they have features nobody else dares to try. But marketing isn't just commercials, it's also about community perception. The Apple fandom is legendary. iPhone users create massive hype online, forming tribes that treat every new model like an event. Samsung fans, on the other hand, are more fragmented, often tech-savvy individuals who love debating specs, features, and software tweaks. This cultural difference in fandom tells us why Apple thrives on consistency, while Samsung thrives on variety. Let's also talk about longevity in the real world. iPhones are often used for 4, 5, sometimes even 6 years, thanks to software support and resale value. Samsung has improved here recently, promising years of updates, but traditionally Android devices didn't last as long. Still, Samsung makes up for it by giving users more hardware flexibility, replaceable parts in older models, expandable storage in past generations, and more frequent innovation cycles. Another angle is global influence beyond sales numbers. Apple sets trends that the entire industry follows. The removal of the headphone jack? Everyone laughed, until most other brands did it too. The notch? Mocked at first, now copied in different forms. Samsung, meanwhile, often introduces the wild ideas first: curved displays, foldables, giant screens, and while not every experiment sticks, those that do often become industry standards years later. And then there's the business model behind the scenes. Apple makes most of its money from premium hardware and services, App Store fees, iCloud storage, Apple Music, Fitness Plus. Samsung, however, is more diversified. They make displays, semiconductors, home appliances, TVs, even components used in their competitors' devices. So while Apple is entirely dependent on the iPhone's success, Samsung can afford to take risks, knowing they have other revenue streams. This difference explains why Samsung pushes bold designs while Apple moves cautiously but deliberately. Now, let's paint a picture of future possibilities. Imagine walking into a coffee shop. Your iPhone recognizes your presence, automatically pays for your order, and projects an AR hologram of your to-do list on the table through your Apple glasses. No buttons, no fuss, just seamless living. On the flip side, picture a Samsung Galaxy that unfolds into a tablet, attaches magnetically to a wireless keyboard, and instantly becomes your work laptop for the day. Or perhaps it rolls out like a scroll, giving you a cinema-sized display wherever you are. Samsung's vision of the future feels tactile, flexible, and constantly transforming. And while we talk about imagination, there's another frontier: health and wellness. Apple is already moving deep into this space with ECG sensors, blood oxygen monitors, and emergency satellite connectivity. It's not far-fetched to think future iPhones might monitor blood sugar, detect early illnesses, or even act as portable medical scanners. Samsung, meanwhile, integrates health features too, but often with a broader reach, connecting to smart fridges, washing machines, and even smart city infrastructures. Their goal is to make the Galaxy not just a phone, but a remote control for your environment. For many, their first iPhone was a milestone, maybe a gift, maybe a hard-earned purchase. It carries nostalgia, a memory of when technology first felt magical. For Samsung fans, the emotional bond often comes from the thrill of trying something no one else has yet: a foldable, a massive zoom, a screen that curves at the edges. These emotions shape loyalty in ways that specs never can. When you pick up an iPhone, everything feels tightly integrated, almost like Apple is holding your hand and guiding you step by step. The menus are simple, the settings are grouped logically, and even if you're not tech-savvy, you'll likely figure things out quickly. Apple has designed iOS with inclusivity in mind. Features like VoiceOver for the visually impaired, haptic feedback for touch guidance, and screen reading accessibility options are polished to perfection. Samsung, on the other hand, offers accessibility too, but in a more customizable way. With One UI, you can enlarge fonts far beyond iOS limits, remap buttons for convenience, or tweak gestures to suit your needs. Samsung even includes advanced tools like DeX Mode, which can transform your phone into a near desktop experience when plugged into a monitor. That's something Apple has never truly matched, despite the iPad's push into laptop territory. Now let's talk about audio and multimedia experiences. iPhones have historically been strong in audio quality, especially in terms of stereo speaker balance, clarity, and spatial audio integration with AirPods. When you pair your iPhone with Apple's AirPods Pro or AirPods Max, the ecosystem comes alive. Features like automatic device switching, spatial audio head tracking, and deep Siri integration create a premium, seamless experience. Samsung, however, focuses on versatility. Their Galaxy devices support high-resolution Bluetooth codecs like aptX HD and LDAC, allowing audiophiles to enjoy top-quality sound on a wide range of headphones, not just Samsung's Galaxy Buds. And when it comes to wired audio, Samsung used to have the upper hand with headphone jacks and micro SD card support, though in recent years, they too have moved toward the wireless-first, storage-limited model. Speaking of storage, let's dive into that. Apple has always stuck to fixed storage options. You choose at the time of purchase, and that's it. If you buy a 128GB iPhone and later fill it up with photos and videos, your only option is to upgrade to iCloud or delete things. Samsung, however, gave users freedom for years with microSD expansion, letting you add up to a terabyte of extra storage cheaply. That feature has disappeared in recent flagships, but Samsung still tends to offer more base storage than Apple for the price, plus faster read-write speeds in some cases. Now, let's touch on gaming. If you're into mobile gaming, this debate gets even more interesting. iPhones are powered by Apple's A series chips, which often outperform Snapdragon processors in raw GPU benchmarks. iOS also has tighter optimization. Developers build games knowing the exact hardware and software environment, which means fewer compatibility issues and smoother performance across the board. Titles like Genshin Impact, Call of Duty Mobile, and PUBG Mobile often run better on iPhones even with fewer cores or less RAM on paper. Samsung, though, appeals to gamers in a different way. Larger displays with higher refresh rates, game launcher optimizations, advanced cooling systems, and sometimes special gaming editions of their phones make them attractive to hardcore players. Plus, with Samsung, you can use features like Samsung DeX with a controller to play mobile games on a bigger screen, almost like having a mini console in your pocket. But let's step away from raw performance and talk about something that shapes how we use these devices daily: customization versus consistency. Apple believes in consistency. Every iPhone, whether it's the standard model or the Pro Max, looks and feels like part of the same family. Updates roll out to everyone at the same time, interfaces remain uniform, and the experience is predictable. For some, this reliability is comforting. It means your phone won't surprise you with strange changes or bugs every other month. Samsung, however, is all about making your phone truly yours. Want a home screen filled with widgets, themed icons, custom fonts, or edge panels with shortcuts? No problem. Want to switch between navigation buttons and gesture controls? Easy. You can even run two apps side by side with split-screen multitasking, something iPhones still don't allow natively. This flexibility means no two Galaxy phones look or feel the same, even if they're the same model. Now let's venture into a fun but important area: durability. iPhones are famous for their premium build, but Apple has had its share of controversies. Remember Bendgate with the iPhone 6 Plus? Or glass backs that shatter after one drop? Apple has improved durability significantly with ceramic shield glass and stronger stainless steel frames, but replacing broken parts is still expensive and, in many regions, limited to official repair shops. Samsung's durability story is a little more daring. They were the first major player to introduce foldable smartphones, like the Galaxy Z Fold and Flip series, essentially redefining what a smartphone could look like. Yes, early versions had durability concerns with creases and fragile screens, but each generation gets tougher. Samsung also leads the way with IP68 water resistance across their lineup, often before Apple adopts similar standards. And we can't ignore repairability. Apple has a reputation for tightly controlling repairs, locking down parts, and making it challenging for third-party shops to replace components. Samsung isn't perfect in this regard either, but historically, their devices have been somewhat easier to open and repair. With new right to repair laws spreading globally, both companies are being pushed to make devices more user serviceable, something we'll likely see evolve in the next few years. Now, let's move to innovation versus refinement. Samsung is often seen as the innovator, the brand willing to experiment with bold ideas. Curved edge displays, foldables, S Pen support in smartphones, 100x zoom cameras, all of these were risks Samsung took before others. Some innovations stick, some fade, but Samsung isn't afraid to try. Apple, on the other hand, plays the long game. They wait, watch the market, and only adopt features when they can deliver them in a polished, reliable way. Wireless charging, OLED displays, and 5G all came to iPhones later than Android phones, but when Apple finally implemented them, the execution was flawless. This difference in philosophy makes the rivalry so fascinating. Samsung pushes boundaries, while Apple perfects them. Apple has made headlines in recent years for pushing its environmental initiatives. They proudly announce that their devices use recycled aluminum, rare earth elements, and even gold in some internal components. They also emphasize carbon-neutral goals for their supply chain and operations. Remember when Apple stopped including the charging brick in the iPhone box? While it sparked controversy, Apple positioned it as an eco-conscious move to reduce e-waste and shipping volume. Samsung, meanwhile, has followed suit by removing chargers in newer Galaxy devices and working toward greener packaging. However, Samsung often takes a more regionally tailored approach. Their environmental initiatives vary depending on markets, and they don't always push the same unified messaging that Apple does. Still, Samsung invests heavily in renewable energy and recycling programs, especially in South Korea, and they've started producing more eco-conscious accessories like cases made from recycled plastic. With Apple, one of the standout features is Face ID. Since its introduction, Face ID has been regarded as one of the most secure and seamless biometric authentication methods. It works in bright sunlight, in the dark, and even adapts to changes in your appearance, like growing a beard or wearing glasses. For many users, it feels magical, almost invisible. Samsung, however, leans into variety. They offer in-display fingerprint scanners, facial recognition, and even iris scanning on some older models. Their ultrasonic fingerprint sensor is particularly advanced compared to the optical sensors used by other Android brands, giving users multiple ways to unlock their device. This flexibility appeals to people who don't want to be locked into just one method. Now let's dive into something really exciting: productivity tools. Apple positions the iPhone as a lifestyle device, great for creativity, communication, and entertainment. Features like AirDrop, iMessage, Notes Sync, and Handoff create a smooth workflow, especially if you use Macs or iPads. But when it comes to raw productivity power, Samsung has carved a niche with the S Pen. The Galaxy Note series, and now the S Ultra models, brought stylus functionality to smartphones in a way that Apple still hasn't matched. The S Pen isn't just for writing, it's for precision drawing, remote camera control, screen-off memos, translations, and even air gestures. For business professionals, artists, and students, it transforms the phone into a miniature productivity hub. In the United States, iPhones dominate. Owning an iPhone there isn't just about the device, it's about being part of a cultural phenomenon. From iMessage group chats to AirDrop in schools, the iPhone has become a kind of social currency. Many young people even feel pressured to own one, because being the green bubble in a group chat can make you feel left out. In contrast, Samsung enjoys incredible dominance in other regions, especially in Asia and parts of Europe. In South Korea, Samsung is a point of national pride. In markets like India, Samsung often competes strongly with Apple by offering a wide range of devices, from budget-friendly models to premium flagships. Apple, in comparison, focuses only on the high-end segment, which limits its market share outside wealthier countries. Apple is very strategic here. iPhones are known for being among the first to support new wireless standards, like Wi-Fi 6, ultra-wideband, UWB, and advanced LTE bands. But Apple tends to limit certain features by region. For example, dual SIM support came late to iPhones and still works differently depending on where you buy the device. Samsung, on the other hand, is often more flexible. Dual SIM slots, micro SD cards, and broader 5G band compatibility have made Galaxy devices popular among international travelers and users in developing countries. They often tailor specific models to local network needs, giving them an edge in accessibility worldwide. Earlier, we talked about cameras in general, but let's go deeper into the philosophy of image processing. Apple aims for natural-looking results. Their smart HDR system balances highlights and shadows in a way that feels true to life. Video recording, especially, is Apple's stronghold. Features like cinematic mode, Dolby Vision HDR, and smooth stabilization make iPhones the go-to device for vloggers, filmmakers, and content creators. Samsung, in contrast, goes bold. Their images are often more vibrant, more colorful, sometimes bordering on exaggerated, but that's exactly what many users love. They pioneered high-resolution sensors like the 108MP and even 200 megapixels cameras, and their space zoom features let you capture shots that are impossible on an iPhone. Samsung's approach is about giving users more tools, more modes, more freedom. From single-take mode to director's view, Samsung empowers users to get creative with photography in ways Apple doesn't always encourage. Apple has been quietly but steadily building its AR ecosystem for years. With ARKit, developers can create immersive AR experiences, and Apple is positioning the iPhone as a foundation for a future where augmented reality and mixed reality devices play a huge role. Rumors about Apple's AR glasses or Vision Pro integration make it clear they're playing a long game. Samsung, while also experimenting with AR, has leaned more toward virtual reality, VR. Remember the Gear VR headsets? While they didn't dominate the market, they showed Samsung's willingness to push into immersive experiences. Today, Samsung focuses more on AR within its camera features, like fun filters and live translation, rather than building a massive developer ecosystem like Apple. Apple's Genius Bar and retail store network set the gold standard in customer experience. If you have an issue, you can walk into an Apple store, get face-to-face help, and often walk out with a replacement device. Their warranty programs, AppleCare Plus, and seamless returns build an incredible sense of trust. Samsung, while not as uniform globally, has been improving its support systems. In some regions, they even offer doorstep pickup and delivery repair services, on-site technicians, and extended warranties that rival Apple's offerings. They also have a strong network of service centers worldwide, often making repairs faster and cheaper than Apple's tightly controlled system. Apple maintains a near-uniform premium pricing model across the globe, only adjusting slightly for currency and taxes. Samsung, on the other hand, has highly flexible regional pricing. For example, in India, Samsung often introduces special offers, cashback deals, and localized editions, while Apple rarely discounts iPhones officially in emerging markets. This makes Samsung more accessible outside of North America and Europe. Apple has consistently used stainless steel in Pro models and aluminum in non-Pro models. Samsung experiments more: aluminum, glass composites, and foldable flexible materials for their Z series. They've even explored armor aluminum frames for extra strength, something Apple hasn't named or branded specifically. Samsung tends to diversify material innovation faster than Apple. Apple hasn't yet released a foldable iPhone. Samsung dominates this space with the Galaxy Z Fold and Z Flip lines, pioneering hinge durability, ultra-thin glass, and optimized multitasking for foldable screens. This represents a major philosophical divide. Apple refines the slab smartphone, while Samsung reimagines the form factor entirely. We briefly noted the S Pen, but not its deep hardware-level integration. Samsung engineered its display digitizers to reduce latency down to as low as 2.8 milliseconds, creating near-instant pen-to-screen feedback. Apple only provides stylus use on iPads, never on iPhones, which signals a clear difference in product segmentation strategies. Samsung pushes smartphones into hybrid roles. With Samsung DeX, a phone can serve as a desktop-like workstation. Apple has resisted this on iPhones, instead steering users toward buying a MacBook or iPad for that role. This shows how Apple monetizes through ecosystem separation, while Samsung consolidates more roles into one device. Apple Pay dominates in Western countries thanks to its integration and widespread adoption. Samsung Pay, however, launched with MST, magnetic secure transmission, allowing users to pay even on older card machines without NFC. While MST has been phased out in newer models, it gave Samsung a major advantage in regions where contactless payments weren't yet common. Apple has pushed ahead with emergency SOS via satellite, starting with iPhone 14. This allows users to contact emergency services in remote areas without cell service. Samsung has announced similar initiatives with partners but hasn't yet fully matched Apple's global rollout. This is a space where Apple leads in life-saving features. Samsung integrates more advanced health and wellness tracking directly into its devices, especially with synergy across Galaxy Watches. Blood pressure monitoring, body composition analysis, and stress tracking are deeply tied to Samsung's ecosystem. Apple emphasizes health through the Apple Watch, but iPhones themselves don't include as many built-in health metrics. Apple invests heavily in augmented reality frameworks, ARKit, to prepare for future AR glasses. Samsung is shifting momentum toward artificial intelligence, embedding AI tools like real-time transcription, translation, and photo editing in its phones. This sets the stage for two diverging innovation paths: Apple toward AR hardware, Samsung toward eye-driven experiences. Apple Care Plus offers global coverage with standardized policies, but it's expensive and not equally accessible everywhere. Samsung often tailors warranty plans to local markets, sometimes offering free screen replacements or buyback guarantees in Asia and the Middle East. This makes Samsung's after-sales service more adaptive, though less globally consistent compared to Apple. iPhones dominate Hollywood, TV shows, and Western advertising, often portrayed as the device of choice for professionals and creatives. Samsung invests more in sports sponsorships, music partnerships, and influencer campaigns, especially in Asia. Each brand's cultural visibility is strategically curated, shaping how aspirational each phone feels in different regions. Apple tightly controls distribution, making gray market imports harder to support with warranty. Samsung devices, by contrast, are more widely distributed and adaptable to gray markets, often with multiple variants per region. This flexibility benefits Samsung in emerging economies where official channels aren't as dominant. Apple has already switched to eSIM-only iPhones in the US, removing the physical SIM tray. Samsung continues to support both eSIM and physical SIM in most regions, which is important for people who travel internationally and rely on local SIM cards. Apple's move feels futuristic but restrictive, while Samsung provides flexibility. Samsung uses the UFS, Universal Flash Storage, standard, with versions like UFS 3.1 and 4.0, which deliver extremely fast read-write speeds. Apple, while not marketing file systems publicly, uses proprietary storage solutions that are tightly coupled with its chipsets. Samsung's approach is about raw speed for multitasking and large file transfers, while Apple focuses on consistent performance tuned for iOS. Samsung often leads in maximizing screen-to-body ratio with thinner bezels, curved edges, and punch-hole cameras. Apple has stayed with the notch and, more recently, the dynamic island. Apple prioritizes sensor integration over maximum display real estate, while Samsung pushes boundaries on immersive screen design. Apple's Taptic engine is widely regarded as the industry leader in precision haptic feedback. It delivers subtle vibrations that feel more natural, whether typing, unlocking, or receiving notifications. Samsung's haptics have improved significantly but remain less refined, favoring stronger feedback over precision. Apple relies heavily on partners like Foxconn and TSMC for assembly and chip production. Samsung, however, is vertically integrated. It manufactures its own displays, memory chips, and even processors, Exynos. This gives Samsung greater control over component supply and allows them to push hardware innovation faster. Apple devices in certain regions, especially the US, are often tied to carriers through contracts and can be harder to unlock. Samsung devices, depending on the market, usually provide more freedom with unlocked models and dual SIM options. This difference influences customer choice in markets with high carrier dependency. Samsung offers specialized devices like the Galaxy X Cover series, built for industrial, outdoor, and field use cases with rugged designs and replaceable batteries. Apple does not produce ruggedized iPhones, relying instead on third-party cases. This gives Samsung a unique niche in enterprise and heavy-duty environments. Apple restricts certain iPhone features by region. For example, FaceTime audio-video was historically disabled in some Middle Eastern countries. Samsung tends to ship more standardized global features, avoiding such restrictions unless mandated by law. This impacts usability for international buyers. Samsung devices with USB-C often support DisplayPort alternate mode, meaning you can plug your phone directly into a monitor or TV with a cable. Apple does not allow this functionality on iPhones, forcing users toward AirPlay or proprietary adapters. This makes Samsung phones more versatile for professional and educational use. Apple's Pro models are often heavier due to stainless steel frames and larger batteries. Samsung devices are lighter on average, especially with aluminum builds and curved glass designs. This makes a noticeable difference in hand comfort for long-term daily use. Samsung has experimented with hardware like heart rate monitors, SpO2 sensors, barometers, and even gesture sensors in earlier Galaxy models. Apple keeps hardware sensors minimal, leaning more on the Apple Watch for those capabilities. This reflects different strategies. Samsung builds features into the phone itself, Apple separates them into accessories. Apple launches a small set of devices, usually 4 per year. Samsung releases a wide array, a series, S-series, Z-series, Note, previously, and niche models. This means Samsung appeals to more user segments, while Apple maintains exclusivity and simplicity. Apple's repair ecosystem is centralized and tightly controlled, with authorized service providers. Samsung has a wider network of regional service partners, making parts more accessible in some countries. This sometimes makes Samsung devices easier and cheaper to repair outside the US and Europe. Samsung offers multiple levels of power saving and ultra power saving modes, drastically extending battery life by limiting background processes and even switching to grayscale. Apple offers low power mode, which is simpler but less customizable. Samsung provides more granular control over energy management. Apple ships iPhones with minimal stock apps and focuses on system essentials. Samsung loads its phones with Samsung apps, Google apps, and often carrier apps. While some users see this as bloatware, others appreciate the variety and additional functions, like Samsung's built-in file manager or voice recorder. Samsung provides advanced audio recording options, including stereo recording, directional microphones, and pro video controls. Apple limits manual control but delivers very high-quality microphones with noise reduction. Samsung appeals to professionals who want flexibility, while Apple caters to plug-and-play simplicity. Smartphones are also about staying connected, and here the differences become interesting. iPhones often launch with fewer modem features but maintain stable connectivity, thanks to Apple's strict calibration with carriers. Samsung Galaxy, on the other hand, usually brings cutting-edge features first, like early adoption of 5G bands, Wi-Fi 6E, satellite communication trials, and faster mobile hotspots. For users who prioritize having the newest connectivity options, Samsung often leads the way, while Apple focuses more on stability and long-term reliability. Storage has become a hot debate. iPhones lock you into fixed internal storage with no option to expand. If you buy a 128GB model, you'll need to manage your space carefully or pay extra for iCloud. Samsung Galaxy phones historically stood out with micro SD card support, though recent flagships have dropped it. Still, Samsung gives more variety in base storage options, often starting at 256GB. This difference affects not just photographers and gamers but also anyone who wants more control over local storage. Heat management is a hidden but crucial factor in daily performance. iPhones are engineered with efficiency in mind, but during heavy gaming or long 4K video recording, they can get noticeably warm and throttle performance. Samsung, with larger chassis and advanced cooling systems like vapor chambers, tends to handle extended sessions better. For creators who film long clips or gamers playing hours at a stretch, these thermal differences directly impact usability. One area where Samsung holds a unique edge is multitasking. Features like split-screen apps, pop-up windows, and the Samsung DeX desktop mode allow users to use their Galaxy like a mini-computer with an external monitor. Apple, in contrast, keeps multitasking on iPhones limited, no split screen, no external desktop mode. Instead, Apple pushes users toward iPads and Macs for advanced workflows. For users wanting a single device to do it all, Galaxy wins here, while iPhone keeps things streamlined but less versatile. Here's something rarely discussed. The same Samsung Galaxy model can ship with different processors depending on region, Snapdragon in some countries, Exynos in others. This can affect performance, efficiency, and even camera output slightly. Apple, by contrast, sells the same iPhone hardware globally, ensuring a consistent experience everywhere. This creates a unique dilemma. Samsung buyers in certain regions may feel left out compared to those who get Snapdragon models. Artificial intelligence is becoming a core part of smartphones. Apple emphasizes privacy-preserving AI, running tasks like photo categorization, keyboard predictions, and Siri suggestions mostly on device. Samsung leans heavily into AI features too, but with different priorities, like advanced scene recognition in the camera, real-time transcription, and AI-driven multitasking tools. With the rise of generative AI, Samsung is faster at integrating bold features, while Apple tends to refine slowly and focus on privacy. Another practical aspect: resale value. iPhones consistently retain higher resale prices years after launch. Even older iPhones sell quickly in secondhand markets because of Apple's brand reputation and long support cycles. Samsung Galaxy phones, while popular at launch, tend to depreciate faster. For budget-conscious users who upgrade often, iPhones offer a better return on investment, whereas Samsung buyers may accept faster depreciation in exchange for feature-rich devices upfront. Accessories play a bigger role than people think. Apple's MagSafe ecosystem has exploded with third-party support, magnetic chargers, wallets, mounts, and power banks designed specifically for iPhones. Samsung offers a wide range of accessories too, from Galaxy Buds to Galaxy Watches, but MagSafe's magnet-based ecosystem feels more polished. However, Samsung keeps an advantage in compatibility, since many of its devices use standard USB-C charging and support a wide array of universal accessories. The cultural footprint of iPhone versus Samsung Galaxy can't be ignored. In many parts of the world, iPhones are seen as status symbols, associated with luxury, branding, and social identity. Samsung, on the other hand, is admired for innovation, variety, and accessibility. In some markets like South Korea or India, Samsung dominates, while in the US and Japan, iPhones are everywhere. This cultural context influences how people perceive the best phone, beyond just specs. Samsung has boldly stepped into the foldable market with devices like the Galaxy Z Fold and Flip. These phones give users an entirely new way to interact, offering tablet-like multitasking on the Fold or compact design on the Flip. Apple, on the other hand, has stayed away from foldables so far, focusing entirely on refining the classic slab design. This creates a unique divide. Samsung positions itself as the risk-taking innovator, while Apple waits until a technology matures before entering the space. Interestingly, Samsung often tailors software features to specific regions. For example, Samsung Pay supports MST, magnetic secure transmission, in certain countries, allowing it to work with older card machines that don't support NFC. Apple Pay, while global, sticks strictly to NFC. Similarly, call recording, dual SIM flexibility, and localized settings appear more frequently on Samsung devices depending on the market. Apple's approach is more uniform worldwide, ensuring consistency but sometimes limiting localized convenience. In the corporate world, iPhones often dominate because of their perceived security, ease of management, and tight integration with enterprise tools. Many companies issue iPhones as work devices for these reasons. Samsung, however, pushes strong into enterprise with Knox Security, DeX for desktop replacement, and partnerships with Microsoft for productivity apps. Businesses that value versatility and PC-like workflows may lean toward Galaxy, while those prioritizing lockdown simplicity stick with iPhones. For photography enthusiasts, both brands cater to advanced needs differently. iPhones support Pro RAW, which captures extra detail for editing without losing Apple's color science. This is favored by professionals who want control but also Apple's reliability. Samsung's Expert RAW app provides even more flexibility, letting users shoot in RAW with different lenses, and offering manual controls similar to a DSLR. For creators, the choice often comes down to whether they prefer Apple's polished, consistent output or Samsung's freedom and experimentation. Apple's Health app, paired with the Apple Watch, has become a strong ecosystem for fitness tracking, monitoring heart rate, sleep, ECG, and even fall detection. Samsung has its Health app too, working seamlessly with Galaxy Watches, offering advanced metrics like body composition analysis. Apple tends to prioritize medical-grade accuracy and FDA clearances, while Samsung emphasizes broader lifestyle and wellness tracking. For someone deeply into fitness tech, the choice depends on whether they want clinical precision or broader health features. Emergency communication is another emerging battleground. Apple introduced emergency SOS via satellite, allowing users in remote areas to text emergency services without cellular coverage. Samsung followed with similar initiatives, though rollouts vary by region. These innovations may not be used daily, but in life or death situations, they could be crucial. It shows how competition between the two brands drives safety-focused innovation. Beyond capacity, the way each phone handles storage is different. iPhones use extremely fast NVMe storage, giving them blazing read-write speeds, which directly improves video editing, app launches, and system performance. Samsung Galaxy phones also use fast UFS storage, but often highlight flexibility in file handling, like drag-and-drop file transfers with PCs and external drives. Apple prefers tight integration with iCloud, while Samsung emphasizes open file management through Android. Smartphones are also gateways into cars and smart homes. Apple pushes CarPlay, which is widely adopted across vehicles, offering a familiar interface when you plug in your iPhone. Samsung leans into SmartThings integration, making Galaxy devices more central in controlling smart appliances, TVs, and even IoT devices around the home. For users invested in smart home setups, Samsung's ecosystem can feel more versatile, while Apple offers a cleaner but more limited approach. For creators, video formats matter. iPhones support ProRes video recording, a professional-grade format used in filmmaking and editing workflows. This makes iPhones highly attractive for video creators who want quality and flexibility in post-production. Samsung doesn't offer ProRes, but it provides 8K video recording, something Apple has not fully embraced yet. While iPhone prioritizes professional-grade color and editing pipelines, Samsung emphasizes maximum resolution and advanced recording features. Security methods differ in unique ways. Apple relies mainly on Face ID, which uses a sophisticated 3D depth camera for secure recognition. Samsung provides more options: fingerprint sensors, ultrasonic on flagship models, face unlock, and traditional pins. This flexibility caters to users who prefer having multiple ways to access their device. Apple's method is arguably more secure, while Samsung's is more convenient in varied scenarios. The way a phone feels when you interact with it matters more than most people realize. iPhones are famous for their precise taptic engine, which gives sharp, controlled vibrations whether you're typing, receiving notifications, or using system gestures. Samsung Galaxy phones also offer advanced haptic motors, but their feedback tends to feel softer and less uniform across apps. For users who value tactile precision, iPhone has the edge, while Samsung focuses more on versatility than consistency. Voice calls are still a core smartphone function, and the experience differs subtly. iPhones often emphasize noise cancellation and consistent clarity across carriers worldwide. Samsung Galaxy phones, meanwhile, integrate features like dual SIM standby, Wi-Fi calling options, and regional call enhancements more aggressively. In markets where people juggle multiple SIMs or rely on VoIP, Samsung provides more flexibility, whereas iPhones prioritize reliability and simplicity. Both iPhones and Samsung Galaxy flagships are IP68 rated, meaning resistance to dust and water immersion. But the way they market durability differs. Apple highlights long-term reliability through controlled tests, while Samsung often showcases extreme stress tests, like drop resistance or submersion in different conditions. For adventurous users or those in harsher environments, Samsung's durability demos feel reassuring, while Apple relies more on reputation for reliability. Accessibility is a key but often overlooked factor. iPhones lead with features like VoiceOver for visually impaired users, Live Listen with AirPods, and system-wide haptic responses. Samsung Galaxy matches with TalkBack, customizable accessibility shortcuts, and larger regional language support out of the box. For users in non-English speaking countries, Samsung may feel more accommodating, while Apple shines in polished accessibility for people with disabilities. At the heart of iPhone versus Samsung Galaxy lies a philosophical difference. Samsung positions itself as the fast innovator, experimenting with foldables, ultra-high-resolution cameras, and rapid feature rollouts. Apple positions itself as the refiner, waiting until a technology matures, then introducing it with heavy polish and long-term stability. Neither approach is better, universally. It depends whether a user prefers cutting-edge experimentation or perfected execution. So after 2 hours of diving into history, design, displays, performance, cameras, software, battery, security, pricing, and the future, the big question remains: iPhone or Samsung Galaxy? Which is the best? The truth is, there isn't a single answer. If you value simplicity, consistency, long-term support, and a tightly connected ecosystem, the iPhone is unmatched. It feels like a device that just works, no matter what. But if you crave innovation, flexibility, bold features, and cutting-edge hardware, Samsung Galaxy gives you more freedom and more experimentation. It really comes down to your personality. Are you the type who wants things polished, stable, and seamless? Or are you the type who wants the latest features, maximum customization, and no limits? Both iPhone and Samsung Galaxy are the best, just for different people. And maybe that's why this rivalry has lasted so long. Because at the end of the day, it's not about which phone is better, it's about which one is better for you.